It's my pleasure today to be joined by Monica McKinley, who is running for State House of Representatives in District 21, Seat A. And in case it shows, this is actually our second attempt to record. The first one had some weird stuff happen because of Zoom. So I appreciate Monica coming back to have this conversation once again. And without any further ado, Monica, what brought you to the point where you're running for office, and what's your perspective?
So I decided to run for office because I felt like the incumbent was not representing the people of my district or the state in a way that I would vote. And so I chose to um, run in hopes that we can achieve better goals and be able to stop the spending and achieve actually some fiscal responsibility.
Well, that's a good place as any to start. Obviously, our state budget keeps going up, 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 up. This year it didn't go up quite as much, but part of that was because the federal COVID money, the ARPA money, is starting to expire. But a side effect of that is a lot of state agencies and organizations are becoming dependent on that, and they're going to be looking for more now. So, where do we start when we, look at cutting back on the budget? Is it I've actually talked to some people who say that the way to do it is actually on the tax side. We cut taxes, which reduces the amount of money the government gets, which reduces the budgets. But then there's also the side in JFAC where they're negotiating the budgets. Um, how do we decide what to cut and how do we do it?
Well, I approve of the new way of doing things where the budgets are split up into the maintenance budgets, and then each individual line item for whatever services or agency has their money request, or the governor's request. And once we're able to split those up, we can decide, well, is this important or is that important, and choose the better things. The other thing that I would like to bring up is that even though we only had a small increase this year, it's a 52% increase over the last 4 years. So our budget has increased over 52% in the last 4 years. Now, if my family did that, we wouldn't be able to make our house payment. And so when we do cut, we need to make sure that we cut things that are not necessary for the majority of the people. I know that a lot of people have their pet projects and their pet agencies and their pet money for their spending on this, that, or the other. But when we are trying to reduce a budget, we need to we need to cut where it only affects a certain percentage of the people instead of all of the people of the state of Idaho. For instance, for taxes, everybody needs their taxes cut. We are paying higher taxes than we need to pay. Our small business owners are being taxed and regulated to death, which is one of my missions. If I am elected, I want to look those over and make sure that they're getting the same kind of tax cuts that the big major corporations that are moving to Idaho and they're getting tax cuts, they're getting incentives to move here, and our small business owners get nothing.
From a purely strategic, pragmatic perspective, I could see the argument that it's the big businesses that employ the most people. They then pay taxes. The businesses themselves pay taxes. So that's why I assume that they're giving them incentives and favorable regulations and tax cuts and subsidies and all those other things. Uh, what should the relationship between government and business be? Should we be or should the legislature, that is, be involved at all in trying to attract business or make a favorable climate for business or give certain perks to certain businesses?
Well, I don't feel like that's the legislature's job. The legislature's job is to fund the state of Idaho and to make laws. It is not the legislature's job to decide, who comes here and who doesn't. I think that in lobbying for bigger businesses to come here or major wind or power um, experiments to come here. I'm going to call them an experiment because it's not going to work. It doesn't, we have the wind and the solar. The solar doesn't work when the sun doesn't shine. The wind turbines don't work when the wind isn't blowing, right? So when they, um, when they bring those things to the state of Idaho, it does more harm than I think it does help.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned power because that's also a big debate. We have hydroelectric dams, which currently supply a lot of our electricity, and then they're talking about breaching them to just let the rivers flow. We have the Lava Ridge Wind Farm out east, where they want to go take this land and put a bunch of wind turbines on it. And then I was just hearing recently there was a presentation before the Ada County Commissioners about a solar farm down south. Kind of
Between Kuna and Melba, yeah.
yeah, down there. Um, what should we be doing regarding all of those things? What should we do to make sure that everyone has enough power, but in such a way that doesn't mess stuff up?
Well, I am not for breaching the dams. I think that that would be a huge mistake. We have farmers and ranchers up in, I believe it's Lemhi County, Moscow, Lewiston. They cannot get their products to the coast if they don't use those I think it's barges and trains that they put them on, but I think it's mostly the barges that they come down. And if they breach those dams, there's no way for them. They will all lose their livelihoods. Um, that also is the cheapest power that we have. If we lose that, we lose our cheap power, and then we're going to be in the same boat as LA and other places where are we going to get the power? Um, the solar power is not reliable, wind is not reliable. Those dams are reliable. And so I would definitely, if I had a choice, I would turn down both the solar and the Lava Ridge program. I would vote no for that.
Mhm. And that, of course, that's one of those areas that the solar. It sounds like it's mainly the Ada County that's deciding, and then the wind farm, it's the federal government. Uh, how do we assert our sovereignty as a state, especially against the larger federal government when they come in and just decide they want to do things with, federal land?
Well, we have to stop taking federal money because that money comes with strings attached. I'm sure you're well aware, the incumbents are all saying, "Oh, well, we have a balanced budget. We've balanced the budget." Well, it's not really balanced if we have to take up to 34% from the federal government. That's like borrowing from mom and dad to pay the rent. So when they give us more money than what we pay into, then that's where they tell us what to do. And if we don't take that federal money, then they can't come in here and tell us what to do with our resources. And so we have to stand firm and say, no, you're not coming in here. You're not going to do that.
Well, now I guess that goes back to the spending discussion because what was it,
Mhm,
43% of our budget most recently was federal money. You cut
mhm.
that out, and either people are going to want to replace that with state money, which means raising taxes, or that's a lot of cuts in state government and also the grants that they hand out to organizations for whatever purposes.
Right. Well, quite a few of the legislators warned the governor and warned back in 2021 when they were passing all of these bills, like they had an endless supply of money, like they were making it in the back room. And they knew that the CARES money, I mean, if you go back and watch the debates, people like Heather Scott would stand up and tell people that, what's going to happen when the CARES money is no longer here? What's going to happen when we no longer have these federal funds? Well, we, the people, are paying for it. That's what happens. So when they start all the new agencies and when they start spending money that is federal government money, but then when that money runs out, we're left holding the bag for that. So what did we do before that CARES money? We didn't need that. We didn't need a lot of those programs. We need to get rid of those programs.
Yeah. Shifting gears just a little bit, looking at your district, I've got the map up on my other screen here. It's
Okay, got it.
a lot of Meridian. Looks like downtown Meridian, a little bit south of the freeway. Uh,
Hmm.
Looks like mostly suburban areas, a little bit of empty areas. I assume there's some farmland there, some parks. What's unique about your district? What are some of the unique challenges that they face, and what are you hearing from people with regards to what they want you to do in the legislature?
Well, our area is unique because we have a lot of unincorporated parts for Meridian. I personally live in an unincorporated part that's almost right downtown Boise. So I live well within the city limits, yet I am still county. And there are probably 15 or 20 areas just like that that are within the city limits, yet they're still considered unincorporated Ada County. And so the county areas are serviced by a different trash person. The county areas generally have wells and septics. They're not on city water. And so it makes it for an interesting city council race and mayoral race, because even though we are right here, I'm like a mile from Meridian City Hall, yet I don't personally get to vote for the mayor or any of the city council members. So we have a lot of hobby farms, dairies, chickens, lots of animals, lots of people who are, have their little homestead, and they have acres, like 1 acres, 2 acres, we have some areas that have 5 acres spots just on the other side of the freeway in this district. And so what makes it really hard is we've also um, recently, within the last 3 years, had a massive explosion of high-rise apartment complexes, all up and down Pine, all up and down Overland, all up and down Franklin. This causes a problem infrastructurally because we we don't have enough schools for that. We don't have fire, we don't have police, we don't have the services for all of those people. In addition to that, we all used to be farmland. I've lived at my house for almost 30 years. And in that time, we had lots and lots of large acre farming. And what happens with that is the irrigation water goes into the ground. The ground absorbs the water and it goes into the aquifer. Well, now we're using exponentially 10 times, 20 times the amount of water, and we have no recharge. So the Bureau of Reclamation wants to cover the New York Canal with materials that no water escapes, because they're losing, and I can't remember the amount percentage, but they're losing water each year. Well, that's our recharge. We have no recharge for this entire valley. And so in some parts, not in my district, but in some parts of south of the freeway, wells are going dry because they are not getting any recharge. So we have a real issue. That's one of the big issues is water here, as well as transportation. We have the same roads that we had, with very few exceptions, 25 years ago. We need better roads. We need 16 is going to go through. 16 is paid for by your gas tax dollars, so that's not paid for by us. But between gas and federal, that'll go through, and that will help go from the freeway to Gem County and out to Star, and that goes through Meridian. But that's a big project, and that will help alleviate some of the traffic. But the traffic it was non-existent. Now it's just stop and go. I mean, 2.5 hours, just like a big city. We may as well be Boise.
Yes, I've noticed that up here as well. Eagle Road or State at the wrong time of day is impossible. You
Yeah.
mentioned water. It's funny. It brings to mind how I, lived most of my life in Western Washington, where the issue with water there is how do we handle all the water that's coming out of the sky? And
Yeah.
here it's the opposite issue. And the first time I ever heard of this is 10 or 11 years ago. I was visiting some relatives in rural Colorado, and they were talking about the same thing. How the government was going to wall up the canals and prevent any from soaking into the ground. And they saw the dangers of that then, and I don't know how it got resolved, if it did. But that's definitely a debate that needs to be had. And that really brings to mind, the role of government in this, because water is a shared resource. Uh, if one person uses all of it up for whatever reason, maybe a data center for Facebook or something, then
Right.
there's not going to be any left for farmers or for people.
Right.
It's something that you need some disinterested third party to decide how to share it. What should the philosophy be, the governing philosophy be when doing things like that?
Well, I think that as homeowners, we should have sovereignty over our personal properties. The government should not be involved in um, limiting or metering or requesting any kind of information about our own personal wells. Or if you have a certain number of acre feet water and you're a small, say you have 10 acres and you get 10 acre feet per water per year, and that is on your property, and you have a well that pumps that, it is not the government's responsibility to regulate that. That is your water. You pay for that. That's your property. And um, I think it's really important that the government understands where the line is. And we, the people, need to be protected from our government. Big government doesn't need to make decisions for everything. And this is one of those things that is our sovereignty, our bodily sovereignty, our religious sovereignty, our sovereignty over our property. That's that should be ours. We should not have to fight the government to tell us what to do on our own property. And that's one of the things that really made me want to do this, because it is not okay for the government to come onto your property and tell you that they need to meter your water or anything else, or tell you you can't have a water collect. If you're collecting rainwater, that's not the government's business. That's your property.
Mhm. Uh,
And I get a little mad about that. Can you tell?
yeah, no, that's well, if nobody got mad over anything, then nobody would really care, would they? Because
Right.
it's in talking to people, there's always two reasons why someone gets involved in politics. Either they look at political figures and events and think, oh, that sounds fun, that sounds great. But more often, it's they look at people and things and say, that's awful. I need to go in there and fix that, or I can do better than that.
Well, and I am under no disillusions that I can go in there and fix everything. I mean, that's not going to happen. But we can make small baby steps. We can try to fix things. We can collaborate together and see what works. We can try to get together and meet and figure out, okay, if we can't do this, then what's the next best thing that we can do? Because not everything is an easy solution. Not everything is a black and white. There are lots and lots of gray areas. And every time you make a law for something, that means somebody else is getting affected in some other way. So it's you really have to look at all the new laws. Sometimes instead of making a new law, it's better to go back and either change something with a law that we already have on the books, or perhaps we just make a mechanism to make a um, um, consequence for that law. Because sometimes we make laws, but there's no consequences for breaking the law. So we just have to go in there and make that piece, and then law enforcement can step in. Does that make sense?
Hmm? That leads to me to one of my standard questions that I've been asking is, once you're in there, you're going to be surrounded on one side by, executive branch staff, the folks in the governor's office, the attorney general's office, treasurer's office, secretary of state's office. They're all full time. They're
Yes.
experts in their fields. They know their stuff and they've got their agenda. And then you've got lobbyists who are also experts. They generally know what they're talking about, but they have an agenda too, representing their clients. Uh, how do one you stay grounded with the people in your district? Thankfully, you're close enough that you can still hang out with your friends and neighbors every day. But also, how do you make decisions on the really complicated bills, the ones that either there's some good and some bad, or the ones that are just really convoluted and confusing? How do you go about figuring out how you're going to vote on those?
So one of my main thought processes is this: if it costs my district more money, or if it costs the state of Idaho or the people that in their taxes or however it's going to be paid for us, if it costs Idaho more money, the answer is going to be no. Period. I don't care what it is. If it costs us more money, we have to figure out a different way. If it's going to hurt somebody, meaning it's going to take away somebody's right or sovereignty, or if it's against the Constitution, the answer is no. If it's something that we can work together, and it benefits everybody, not just a 2% or a 3% small fringe issue, then we can work to see what would be the best outcome of that. And at that point, you come to the table and you collaborate and figure out how to do that. Not just one person. You'll notice that on a lot of the bills, you have a bill sponsor, but then you have a lot of co-sponsors, which means they've caucused about it. They've talked about it. They've looked at the ramifications. They've asked the Attorney General if this will meet muster, if it's challenged. And there's a lot that goes into it to make sure that it's something good. So, in order to vote for something, it's got to be of benefit to us and not just something that somebody wants as a pet project.
Hmm.
I mean, because the lobbyists are always going to want something, always, always.
No, that's their job.
Yep, that is their job. But we as legislators need to ask, why do you want this? Who wants this? And how will this help the people? I mean, is this just something that the people that you work for are telling you that they want, or is this really going to help somebody? And then you go out into your district and you send them an email, or you walk doors and you say, hey, what do you think about this? They're trying to raise 2% tax on your, and I'm just making stuff up, but they're going to raise your tax by 2% so that they can save the white-horned owl that's now decided to roost in, the village spire, right? What are your thoughts on that? And you go out and you talk to the people in your district and you find out whether they're for it or not for it. And that's how you do it. You don't just assume that that's what they want. You ask.
Well, I would bet that the white-horned owls would be in favor of that.
I bet they would too.
So shifting gears a little bit, 2 years ago, you ran on a third-party ticket against the now incumbent senator from your district. And I mean, you got 2,600 votes. I'm looking it up here. But that's obviously well short of being competitive. And I think that's just because most people just vote for the letter. In the general election, you're just voting R or D, and sometimes there's a C or an L, and you wonder what that's about. Now, obviously, this time you're in the Republican primary, so you're in the game. What did you learn from that campaign that you're able to apply in this one?
Well, I've been a lifelong Republican. I made a short switch over to a third party because for just that race, because I did not want to have that seat uncontested. I knew that I would not win, but I did. But I did do that to make sure that there was an uncontested race. And it wasn't probably my brightest shining moment. It was, I would never do that again if I had a chance to do it over again. But as soon as it was over, I switched back. It was a mistake. And I learned that, I learned a lot of things from that, but the biggest thing that I learned was that the primary is the race. So by the time it gets to the general, it's done.
Mhm.
It's done. So the primary is the race.
And to go after the other elephant in the room here,
Yeah.
you're in a three-way primary, which
Yep.
is obviously, depending on the situation, it could be easier because maybe you only have to get 34%, but it could also be more difficult if you have two people who are generally conservative against a moderate incumbent. I see that in a lot of other districts, District 1, District 6, have those dynamics. So what do you have to do to distinguish yourself both from the incumbent but also from another challenger?
Right. Well, it's a shame that the other challenger chose to um, not withdraw. I did check the sunshine reports, and I don't see much activity from the third party. As a matter of fact, I don't really see any activity. There's no signs, no mailers, no phone calls that I know of. And I think I think that's a good thing for me. Um, I I'm different because I see things a lot different than the incumbent. I would not vote for probably most of the things that he voted for. And I have been here for a very long time. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of changes. And I know a lot of people here. And in my walking around talking to people, they're very frustrated with the non-transparency. They're very, very frustrated with um, the border situation and the fentanyl. Nobody here wants to end up like California or Oregon. And our police officers are really starting to have some things happen that didn't happen 5 years ago. And so I think it's really important that we stay with our Idaho conservative values because family comes first. Our small businesses come first. We have to protect what we have, and I'm not about letting big government overreach um, take over if I can have a say in stopping it. And again, the incumbent voted for every single one of those budgets. I don't think he met a budget he didn't like. And that's not really a budget. That's just going on a spending spree, in my opinion. And we've got to stop it.
Uh, Before we started recording, you were talking about endorsements, and I've been adding different endorsements to to my website, and I'm noticing a pattern in that a lot of the business associations and the agricultural associations, uh, and those groups, that they all stick together. They're basically the same. And then on the other side, a lot of the liberty organizations, the conservatives of Idaho Freedom Pack, Citizens Alliance, they're kind of all the same too. There's very little crossover between the two, so it seems like there is a significant divide within the Republican Party. What are your thoughts on that and endorsements, and wherever else you want to go?
Well, I think that it's a shame that that the incumbents not only get um, endorsements from large corporations, Pfizer, Blue Cross, the association of this, the association of that. Um, but they're using our money against us. If you look at in my case, he was endorsed um, by the legislature, received $1,000 from the GOP, and I don't think that we should be able to use our money against for that purpose. I think he should use his own money for that.
Hmm.
And if you look at my specific race and you compare it, I am endorsed by people, real people, people that want a say in what's happening down at the legislature. My opponent is endorsed by lobbyists and people who spend a lot of money down at the Capitol to get the committees to vote for what they want. And that's a shame. I think that the the legislators should work for the people, not the lobbyists, not the governor, not Pfizer, not the teachers union, not not these big corporations. They should work for us.
You mentioned Pfizer and Blue Cross a couple of times there. That brings me to, what I understand is an important issue for you, and that's health freedom. There were several bills over this last year to, kind of in response to the COVID lockdowns and the overreach of government from there. There was one that would have restricted the authority of health districts, and that one was defeated in a Senate committee. There was one that would ban mask mandates by government organizations such as cities or counties or courthouses, and that one was also that one was actually just stuck in a drawer in a Senate committee and never heard from
Mhm.
again. Uh,
Oh, there were a few of those.
yeah, oh, quite a few.
Yeah.
What should the government do with regards to health freedom? What bills do we need? What needs to be changed or repealed? Where do we need to go from here?
Oh gosh, that's an hour-long discussion. Um, the government should not be involved with our bodily sovereignty. If we've learned anything from COVID, we've learned that in hindsight, all of those mask mandates were for naught. People lost their jobs, people lost their businesses. Our children, with with between not being able to go to school and being masked up at school, they're at least a year behind. Um, and there were significant issues because the government and people became paranoid and forced people to do things that they didn't want to do. Um, and so I think it's really important that we follow the United States and the Idaho Constitution when it comes to um, all of the amendments, not just the First Amendment, not just the Second Amendment, not just the Fourth Amendment, but all of them. And they need to be transparent. If we are, I think Representative Nichols, maybe Judy Boyle, I cannot remember, but it was either this last session or the session before. They brought a bill, it didn't go. I think it got stuck in a drawer, where it was a truth in labeling bill, where it said, if there is MNRA or anything like that in our food, you have to put it on the label. It didn't pass.
Hmm.
That's a shame.
I wonder why. I wonder which lobbyists got the call on that one.
I'm I might mention the name Monsanto because that's another one that's come up this year that Monsanto Bayer is a pretty big lobbyist. So I would submit to those who are voting to see who Monsanto and Bayer are donating to, and then I would not vote for those representatives or senators.
Now, they tried 3 times to push through a bill this year that would have
Yeah.
shielded Bayer from lawsuits over Roundup and other
Uh-huh.
pesticides. Uh, and the pro side of that was, well, this is impacting the ability of this company that helps Idaho farmers, and if this product goes away or if it becomes more expensive, then our farms are going to, be completely obliterated. And of course, the other side is, well, if there are harms associated with it, then it's people should have the right to sue and have it have their day in
Right.
court.
Yeah.
But that really shows you, one, that the lobbyists are very loud and powerful, but not
Yes.
all powerful because the bill didn't pass.
Right.
So
And
there's,
yeah. Yeah, and it's a very good thing. And they wouldn't be seeking immunity if there wasn't already damage and they already haven't been paid out, haven't had to pay out. So they don't ask for those things unless they're already hurting, unless it's already a deal. So
you also mentioned, you know, people with, loud voices there, the teachers union, and that's obviously brings us to all sorts of discussions. You have
oh yeah.
the public
There's
school
another
system.
hour long one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have the public school system, which Constitution says we have to provide a free uniform public school system for Idaho children, K-12. So we do, but a lot of people say it has problems. The achievement rates are not where they should be. They're spending a lot of money, not getting a lot for the returns. Some of the buildings are old. They're trying to fix that with that school funding thing that the governor pushed through this year. But then the flip side of that is school choice, money following the student. Last year, there was an education savings account that would have given parents and families the ability to draw from certain, tax dollars to send their children to alternative places or even homeschool. And this year, and that one failed. This year there was a tax credit, and that one didn't even get out of committee. So, what do you think what do you think should be done, both about the public school system in general, and also any ideas about money following the student to alternative options?
Well, I think that for children, when they learn, not one size fits all. Some children learn auditorily, some learn by looking at things, some learn by hands-on, and so not every child's the same. Some are gifted, some really need some help. They've got 504s and IEPs and everything in between, and so not everything is all you know, sunshine and roses when it comes to school, because in the public school, which we have to have, everything is taught to the center. So there needs to be an alternative, and there needs to be alternatives where the parents aren't footing the bill for it. So I am in support of an alternative money supply that follows a child. However, I would not have voted for, as it was, the bill that did not pass last year, because it had an opt out instead of an opt in. That is a huge thing for homeschoolers. Homeschoolers want to stay completely off the grid for whatever reason that they want to stay off the grid. And the Idaho Homeschool Association has made it very, very clear that they do not want to be opted into anything without their permission. So when you give, say, every child, I'm just going to pick a number, $5,000, and you don't want the $5,000, you have to opt out. But they've already got your information. It would be better instead to have an opt-in where we have this $5,000 that will follow this student. If you want it, then you tell us the names of your children and their birth dates and what grades they're in, that sort of thing. And that way it's an opt-in, not an opt-out.
That sounds like something more like the tax credit, where it's after the fact. You check a box when you're doing your tax return, and presumably provide receipts or something. But obviously that hasn't gotten through yet. Do you, with as loud as the teacher unions and the public school administrators and the school boards association, there's a lot of lobbyists connected to the public school system, and a lot
There
of
are.
other interested parties as well. Do you think there's a chance to get something through, or even just something to reform the school system?
Well, I think there needs to be something, and I think it needs to be something that is not hinged on merit pay, which is a big deal for me, because when a teacher, gets either a raise or a bonus or whatever it happens to be based on merit pay, who's the one that decides whether that teacher has merit? Do you know?
Um, I don't know.
It's the Idaho Education Law Union.
Hmm.
So the union is the person who decides if that teacher gets that. So here we are giving power back to the union. So we need to stop giving the teachers union the power. I know a lot of teachers, if they were not forced or harangued or threatened, you can't do anything if you're not part of the union. Let the teachers teach the way that they want to teach, and let them do their jobs. And the union needs to take a huge back seat. And I'm not for the union at all, the teachers union at all. I don't think that they're doing our kids any favor. We keep throwing more and more and more money at our children, and they're not getting any smarter. So why is that? Why do we have more staff people than we have students enrolled in the schools? It just doesn't make sense. We have got to reform our entire education system to something that actually works. And sitting here, I don't know what that is, but I think we need to sit down at a table and say, this isn't working, and this isn't working, and this isn't working. What is working? And find the things that are working, and then build upon those.
Like you said, it's no one person's going to solve everything right on day one. But you get enough of the right people in, and we can start having conversations about
Yeah,
moving things in the right direction.
yeah, absolutely.
Uh, so I appreciate you taking the time once again to talk to me. Hope this one doesn't have the same issues. But are there any other issues good issues that is, that we haven't
Good
covered,
issues.
uh, that you want to talk about, or besides that, just closing thoughts?
Um, you know, the only thing that I would really like to say is the people that send out all of the contradictory mail pieces and text messages against the incumbents, they think they're doing people a favor, and they're not. People don't like that kind of confrontational politics. And for two reasons. Number one, the more hate mail these guys get sent out about them, the more votes they get, the more name recognition they get. And that's why we can't ever get rid of those incumbents, because you have people that have these groups that are sending these hit pieces out on people, and it doesn't help us. because it doesn't get our names out there. It doesn't tell us why they should vote for us. It just gives them more and more recognition. And so if we want a chance at having good people in there, we have got to stop all of the smear campaigns and the biting. For instance, in my district, um, the Ada County Central Committee made a resolution against my opponent for not following the Republican platform. Had they not done that, he would have sat back and thought, "Huh, this is a three-way race. I don't have to work. They're gonna fight it out, and I'm gonna win." But instead, what happened is now he got on Channel 7 and he got to tell his story there. So he gets lots of views there. Um, Now he's out working, walking the district, which I'm pretty sure he didn't have intentions to do before because they don't need to do that as an incumbent, right? So now he's out working hard, and every time I turn on the computer, there's an ad for him. So all it does is put a fire under their butt to work harder against us. And it just makes it harder for us because, again, these people have 40,000, 50,000, $100,000 in Trey Burnt's case. They have all the money in the world to spend, and if they run out of money, they just ask Idaho Power to send out money or to send out flyers, or they'll ask Right to Life to send out flyers or endorsements or phone calls. They won't even call us because we're not an incumbent. We didn't vote. So we don't even get a chance to even get that endorsement. So that's my 2 cents for that. It's not doing anybody any good.
Yeah, I've noticed, in fact, as we record this, I just wrote an article at the Gem State Chronicle about some of the out of state stuff that's coming in and how
Yeah.
they don't necessarily know what's going on, but they're just blasting in with their shotguns.
Yep.
Doesn't matter who they hit. It's crazy, and the reason it's so crazy is because our government has become so important. Um, for better or for worse, they're involved in so many things. Everything, those decisions made in the legislature do affect our lives, and so a lot of people want to control those levers of power.
Right. Well, we need less government. We need to dial it back. We need to not be so big. There is no reason that we need to have such a big government. We need less. The people need to be more involved, and the churches need to be more involved, and our community needs to be more involved, and do the things that we should be doing instead of just having Big Brother tell us what to do at every turn.
Monica, Monica McKinley, running for State House of Representatives, District 21, Seat A. Thank you.
You're welcome.